Hi, this is Rick Gualtieri, and this is another Tales of a Midlist Author. Today, I wanted to talk about funding. A while back, I had put up a post about what are good versus bad expenses with regards to producing your book. Now I wanted to spend a little time on how do you get the money to pay for that stuff. So we've already talked about the concept of like self-publishing, making your own covers and such, and some people can do that. Um, in other cases, um, I'm gonna give a plug to my friend Sue London. She writes the Haberdashers Read and See Romance series, and I'm doing so because I'm stealing a quote she gave me, which is, "I can do anything, but I can't do everything," and that really sums it up for me perfectly. In the beginning, I tried to do everything, and quite frankly, I think my product suffered for it. These days, I stick to my strengths. You know, I write. I do pretty good formatting. Um, but I hire out for covers, I hire out for editing, I hire out for proofreading. At some point, I probably will move forward and hire out for formatting as well and just concentrate on the writing. So all in all, just to give you an idea, and this is just my cost, it won't necessarily be yours. I spend, I'd say, roughly about $2,000 for each book in production costs to bring it to market. That doesn't include marketing or anything like that. That is just production costs. Now, 2K is a decent amount of cash. That could be the difference between taking the kids to Disney World in the summer versus letting them swim in the filthy old pond behind Aunt Millie's house. So that is not an inconsiderable outlay of money. So the question is, well, how do you really do that? Assuming, and once again, I'm not saying that's the amount you're going to spend. I mean, you can shop around, find find some deals, find work with other freelancers and all that stuff. But ultimately, it comes down to this: people don't work for free, and if you want a quality product, typically you have to work for it. Some people swear by Fiverr.com. That's where you go and say, hey, I have a job to do, and somebody will say, hey, I'll do it for $5, or I'll do a portion of it for $5. Like maybe I'll edit 3 chapters of your book for $5. Some people have had good results for that. Honestly, I'm a little leery of that. I'd rather just go to find somebody, say, okay, quote me for the full project, what are your references, all that stuff, and let's move forward with that. But that being said, I do realize budget is an issue. So let's talk about some methods. The first is, I would call it the old-fashioned way, the way businesses have always done it. So the first I would say is scrimp and save. Get your costs up front, find out what it's gonna do, and put aside some money every month if you can until you have enough. Keep in mind, this is a business you're running. So, from my perspective, I prefer this because, it's my business. I should take on some of the risk for it, all of that stuff. It kind of shows my commitment to it. I'm not saying if you don't do it this way, you don't show commitment. I'm just saying that's my own personal, quirk, if you will. So scrimp and save. There's the barter system. Maybe you have a skill out there that somebody else can use. Maybe you are a really good editor. But you need a cover. So, hey, maybe talk to somebody and say to another author with some pretty good cover skills, and say, hey, I'll edit your book. You create a cover for me. We'll call it square. There's nothing wrong with the barter system. I'm not saying necessarily, go and tell somebody, hey, I'll give you 3 chickens if you format my book for me. That might work in some cases, but that is another viable option. One option I do not recommend is to do it yourself and fix it later. Now, if you are capable of doing it yourself, it requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, but maybe you can do it. That's fine because you're putting out a quality product. If you're going along that route saying, I'll do as best as I can do right now, but I know it's crummy, and hey, I'll put out a shoddy product and hope that sales come in and I can fix it later. You're kind of screwing over those people who are buying your initial product, and honestly, I don't think that's a great way of doing it. So I would really not recommend that. I'd kind of say, do it right the first time. Another thing is, if you're not a first-time author, reinvest. That's what I do. Believe me, as much as I would like to, get that when I launch a book and that check comes in and I'm like, yes, it's going to be a weekend of liquor and women. No, well, ignoring the fact that my wife would probably kill me for that. But once again, this is my business. I take those proceeds and I reinvest accordingly. So, the last book pays for the next book, also pays for marketing and so on and so on, and it's a cycle. And this is a very common way to do it in business. You don't just pocket everything and run. You budget accordingly. You keep spreadsheets, and you set money aside. Say, okay, This is going to taxes. This is going to marketing. This is going into the next book. And if there's stuff left over, well, then liquor and women. Anyway, there's two other old-fashioned methods, but honestly, I don't really think they work for book production. Angel investors and your typical bank loan. You need to have a really solid business plan for that. And in most cases, it's like, hey, I want to write a good story. And that's really not a solid business plan for most people. And also, angel investors are going to take a decent chunk of that. Hey, okay, you want me to fund your stupid book production? I own the rights to it. Essentially, you turn them into a publisher. Which, if you want a publisher, that's perfectly fine. That's another method of you're not really funding it, but you're allowing somebody else to do it, and you're giving them rights and the lion's share of the proceeds. And you might be getting something in return, though, an advance or whatnot. So there's kind of what I would call the old-fashioned way of doing it. Me, I'm a big fan of the scrimp and save method, and also reinvesting. That's the way I do it. My thoughts are, I reinvest it. There's a risk and reward ratio for this business. I put my books out there. If people like it, they pay them. That's the reward. But if they don't like them, that's the risk. That being said, there are some new ways out there that are catching on steam, and a lot of people have done them successfully. Let's talk about those. So first is crowdfunding. Like a one-time crowdfunding. There's 3 big sites out there for this. There's Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and Indiegogo. And they each have their quirks, but they all kind of do really the same thing. One of those quirks might be, if you go on Kickstarter, it's kind of an all or nothing. You reach your funding goal, you get your money, that's great. If you don't reach your funding goal, you get nothing. I apologize for that little interruption. I decided to just kind of do a jump cut rather than scrapping everything I had taped. Thank you so much, telemarketer, because I really enjoy being interrupted mid-thought. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, crowdfunding. Once again, Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Indiegogo. I mentioned Kickstarter is kind of an all or nothing thing, whereas GoFundMe is kind of one of those, whatever you take in, you get to keep. And I think Indiegogo is kind of like a combination depending on what plan you go with. The good here is you're kind of spreading out the risk. You're saying, hey guys, I have a product, help me fund it, and I'll give you something in return for it. The downside here is that a lot of people go a little nuts on it. I've seen people out there saying, hey, I'm a first-time author, I've never done this before, give me $10,000. And it's like, what the frig do you need $10,000 for? Here's my advice. The most successful ones I've seen for just books, and I'm not talking about illustrations, cool stuff like that, and maybe graphic novels. For just a novel itself, the most successful ones I've seen are in the neighborhood of around $3,000. That's what they're asking for. As I mentioned, my production costs are about $2,000. So $3,000, you can bring a really professional book to market on that price. And quite frankly, if you're asking for more than that, I'd be like, okay, what the hell do you need it for? Because quite frankly, I might want to invest in your book and get a copy of that book in return, but I might not necessarily want to invest in the fact that, okay, you just want to sit there all day and write and not get a job or something. So just something to keep in mind. Now, one thing I will stress here, it takes a lot of work. The most successful Kickstarters and such are not just, hey, fund my book. They go out there and they say, they make a compelling video. They write a compelling case for it. They give snippets. They give pretty good prizes depending on, I know it's not prizes, but they give pretty good tiers of of returns depending on what you pledge. Hey, pledge $5, I'll give you a copy of my ebook. Pledge $10, I'll give you a paperback. Pledge $20, I'll give you an autographed paperback. So they put a lot of work into it. So I don't want you to think this is easy. It's not. If you're just looking for a magic bullet of, hey, free money, this is not the way to do it. And it's not free money because you're expected to take those proceeds and, one, do what you need to do, but also reinvest and send people this stuff they have, funded for. So if I have that autographed paperback, you better send me that damn autographed paperback. Otherwise, I'm remembering you. So that is there. Another form of crowdsourcing is the concept of ongoing. And the site I want to talk about here is Patreon. Think about it. Patreon, patronage. If you go back into the Middle Ages, you had lords and ladies who would have an artist who would work with them, and they would like feed and clothe and like pay for that person, and in return that person would provide, beautiful art, portraits, plays, what have you. And that's kind of the idea behind Patreon, except rather than finding like, one crusty rich old dude to do it, you're finding a bunch of people and you're spreading it out. So maybe you have 50 people all paying $5 a month. And as a result, you're giving them stuff in return. Works similar to Kickstarter. So you say, hey, you fund me X number of dollars each month, you'll get this. I would say a good page to look at, Stant Latour. He is the author of the really cool Zombie Bible series. He has a Patreon account and he works it like a champ. He puts a ton of time and effort into it. He treats his people really well, and they treat him well in return. So he's really he's doing a good job of figuring that out. But once again, comes down to this: hard work, effort. You're giving people something for their money. It's not like, free cash, and you're remembering that not everything that's coming in is yours. You have to reinvest and give stuff back. So that is really the key, and that's, I think, where a lot of these crowdsourcing methods fall flat. Is that whole concept of what's the magic bullet? Let me put something out there and wait for free money to come in. Once again, a lot of work. So keep that in mind for this. There are multiple ways to fund your book. All of them require some form of effort. There isn't that magic, free money fairy who's just going to dump change in your lap and expect nothing in return. So if you're looking for that, honestly, you're probably in the wrong business. If you are looking to put in that effort, if you are looking to cultivate it, if you are looking at start at the beginning and work your way up and prove yourself to people, then you might have a good shot at all of this. So that's my thoughts on that. Keep in mind, publishing is a business. You have to treat it like a business. Whether you do traditional funding methods or whether you look for something new and interesting, it's all about being professional, all about putting in that effort, that work, and building that customer base, starting from zero and building it like one book at a time. And the hope is that eventually you get there, wherever there may be. So once again, my name is Rick Gualtieri. This has been another Tales of a Midlist Author, and I can't wait to talk to you again next time. Thanks.